Hi everyone, today I'm going to be going over how to make this purse here. As you can see, there is a zip on the back to put your coins in, which is all lined. And then this is a zip around purse, so the zip goes around the outside. And there's lots of pockets inside there as well. So you've got all your pockets here for cards, same on the other side. And then a zipped pocket in the middle, which is lined, which I'm using to put my cash in just so it's a little bit more secure. It's also got these accordion folds at the sides, which I'll explain how to do, and they're really easy. There is no particular pattern at the moment, so I just made it up yesterday, and I'm going to go over with you as best I can to show you how to make this. Here are all my pieces already cut. So I've got my outside fabric, which for this one is going to be anchors, and I'll put all the measurements up somewhere on the screen over here so you can see. And then I'm going to line it with this turquoise, and I use it by the meter. I don't know if you guys use anything different, but you're going to need half a meter of that depending on how big you want to make this, because obviously you can make it as big or as small as you want to. I've cut my inner and outer for the inside pockets. On this one I'm going to use the blue stars for the outer and the turquoise for the inner. On this particular one I have got skulls on the outside of the pocket and leopard print on the inside. Hopefully you can see that. And then for these accordion folds, which are these bits here, I'm going to be using this hearts material, so you need 4 of those, and then you need 4 whatever you choose, which I'm going to match the same as my outer for credit card pockets. I also use some fusible fleece, which is like this. It's smooth on one side, and then this side it's got little bobbly bits on, which is the glue, which when you iron it, it's going to fuse. So I'm going to fuse that in a minute to this outside piece on the wrong side. I've marked down the middle, which is here, and then I've measured ½ inch either side, and I'm going to put a bit that's about ½ inch down the middle of that. And then I have these other 2 pieces, which are going to start these ½ inch marks and go all the way out to the edge on either side. This bit is not quite straight at the ends because it's a little off cut, and I like to try and use everything. So I'm going to iron those down in a minute, and then if you want to embroider anything onto the front, that's the time to do it, or if you want to go across and quilt it in squares, that's the time to do it, and then we're going to put the zip on. Okay, so I've been and ironed the iron on the back, leaving a small gap so that when you fold it, it'll give it a little bit of shape at the bottom. I've marked the middle with either end with a pin. So you can see that just by folding it and then putting the pin in there. So we're going to start to attach the zip. I have zipped my zipper on, and I've put a small safety pin at the end so that you don't unzip it off the end of the zip, so that's the most frustrating thing ever. So I'm going to zip it to the end and just back. So I'm going to leave about 1 inch at the end of my zip. And then I'm going to lay it face down on the right side of my material, so it's in line with that zip. Okay, let me move this to the right. So I'm now going to go around and just pin all the way around with this zip, okay? And I'm going to pin it so that I'm making this part of the zip even with the end. When you reach the corners, what you're going to have to do is cut a little bit into the zip. Just pin along and then cut it as you go. It'll be just as easy. Okay, so I've now pinned that all the way around. I've got the zipper pull starting down here, and this is the end. Now I'm going to leave these on until I've sewn it, because my other one moved around a little bit, and then after I've sewn it, then I'm going to even these tails off and cut them off. You're going to sew all the way down till you reach the middle point of your pin down the end, and you're going to start as close as you can to this end. So by leaving a little bit of the tail, you can move your zipper up a little bit, which hopefully should help you be able to get your foot in. I'm not going to put a zipper foot on my machine, but if you've got one and you like to use one, then feel free. Now I'm going to take this to the sewing machine and show you how we're going to sew around it. Okay, so in the meantime what I've done is I've unpinned this from the outer fabric, and I've laid my pockets on how I'm going to have them. So they are roughly 1/4 of an inch from the edge either side. It doesn't matter what that is as long as it's going to fit inside your purse and it's the same both sides. And then they're about 3/4 of an inch for top and bottom here, so that you've got about a finger width between, so that they're going to overlap a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and run a top stitch just along the top of these, just because I think it finishes them off nicely. And I'm going to do that at about 1/4 of an inch, so quite close to the edge. You can do this if you want to, this is totally optional. I just think it looks nice because everything else is getting top stitch. Then I'm going to come back and I'm going to lay them back on here with the 1/4 of the inch at the top. If it's easier, put a little pin in just either side, just so you know where you're coming back to once you've been in top stitch. So it's getting a little bit dark in here now, which isn't ideal, but it is probably about 5:30, 6 o'clock in the evening. Anyway, I've been along and I've top stitched along here. It's not very easy to see because it's really small stitch. I've done it in white just because that coordinates with my fabric. Feel free to do it in whatever you like. I'm going to lay these back on here so that they're directly on top of each other. You've got the one at the bottom which you've folded the bottom over on. So that's nice and neat. Now I'm not going to measure too much, but they're roughly 2 fingers from the edge. I can see that they're central, and 1 finger down from the top, which is 3/4 of an inch, and they're 3/4 of an inch from the top. So if you pin your back one on, at the top, and then I'm going to pin, so there's just 2 pins in the top of that one. Bring the camera around and I'll show you. Okay, so in the top of this one there are 2 pins, and I'm going to pin just the bottom of this one so I can fold it down while I sew that one. Okay, so I've pinned everything on here. I've pinned this one so that I can lift it up, but I can still sew this one. So you're going to sew the one at the back first. You're going to go down the side, along the bottom and up the side. I'm going to be doing this at about 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. You can do a little bit more, a little bit less, as long as you can fit 3 cards in here. And then you can sew this one. You're going to lay it directly on the top and just start here and go all the way down, along and up. Okay? Okay, so I've lined my first one up in my machine. I've lined it up just so it's on the edge of the foot and the needles to one side. I'm going to sew along the side, bottom and the other side, and obviously not the top because it's going to be a pocket. Then I'm going to fold the other one up and do exactly the same. Okay, so I've sewn both of the pockets to the outside, and I've just put some cards in here so you can see. There's a little gap at the top and there's a little gap there so you can see what card's there. We're now going to sew up here to create 3 different compartments for your cards. And if I put them down here a minute, you can just see which is what I've done in this one. In there. Okay, so as you can see, I've put 3 cards across in here because this is how many we're going to fit lengthways. Here I've just used a biro to make a mark, which I'm going to sew over, and here I've used a pin. So do it in whichever way you like. They're roughly, this should be about 7 1/4 inches long, and these are going to be about 2 1/4 inches wide. Don't sew it so that it's exactly the width of the card, because you'll have to be jamming the cards in and out, and plus if you want to put more than one card in one section, it's going to allow you to do that. So do that for both sides, and then sew bottom to top all the way through both pockets. So you just have a bit like this when you've got 6 pockets on each side which you feel credit on, and that can be set to one side. We're then going to start to work on this pouch, which is in the middle here. It's not very easy to see, unfortunately. So take those 2 bits that you've already cut and fuse your fleece onto the back. I literally just draw around them. I use this heat and bond into the fleece. You can use something different, you can use a stabiliser, whatever you've got. I just like it, gives it a bit of extra padding. And I'm just going to trim whatever's overlapped off of the edge so they're nice and even. And then you're going to get your zip. I'm just using standard length zip that goes all the way along. Lay the zip face down on top of your fabric, and then put your backing fabric on the top, so you've made a little sandwich. And then pop a couple pins in. And again, as before, you're going to line the zip up right with the edge of your fabric. So you've got your bottom fabric, your zip face down on that, and then your backing fabric. You're going to sew along the edge, running along the inside of the zip. This is the edge of my zip here, and I'm going to run the edge of my foot along it. I've moved my needle to the far left, so it's going to run alongside it. So I've moved the zipper pull down here, just so as I start off it's nice and level. And I back stitch a little bit, just so that it holds. And then pull the zipper up, back into position. So if you fold this back, you end up with your zipper and everything attached. I'm now going to go along and top stitch it. I'm going to line up with the edge of the foot, make sure that I'm pulling the underneath fabric so it doesn't bunch up. If you want to run an iron along this before you do it, that can be quite a good idea. Okay, so I've top stitched along here and I've pulled it nice and tight on the other side. Doesn't matter if it's a little bit wonky, because you're going to end up with this smaller, because obviously your zip starts here. So do the same with the other side. So put your fabric right side down on your zip and the other fabric on the other side, make a sandwich, sew it down, flip it, and then do your top. Okay, so now you should have a bit like this. I've top stitched down either side so it looks really pretty on the front and the back. You're then going to match up your outsides and your liner. So I'm going to start here, I'm going to go all the way around, down the bottom, up the side, and to here. I'm going to leave a few inch gap to turn this through the right way. So I'm now just coming down the side. I'm going to feel where the zip is, because this one's actually got a little metal bit in it, and I obviously don't want to sew over that. So I'm going to line it up and just feel where that is, and I'm going to sew slightly to the right of it, just so that's included in the top of the bag. Okay, so I'm just coming down the other side. I've opened the zip up a little bit so it doesn't get in the way, and again I'm going to feel where these little metal bits are, and I'm going to sew slightly to the right of them. I don't want to sew over the top of them, just so that's the end of the bag, and then I'm going to leave a gap at the bottom to turn it through. Okay, so I'm all lined up on my sewing machine here. I'm going to sew as close as I can to the zipper edge here, making sure the end of that is lined up with my fabric. I've put my needle down, and this pin here is the pin marking the middle of the fabric, and then I'm going to take this pin out as I start sewing. Okay, this is not the most ideal way of filming this, but let me just show you what I've done. So I've just started off here next to the zip. I've put the needle down, gone backwards and forwards, and I've now gone along, and I'm now reaching the corner. So I'm going to go along to my corner, keeping the edge of my foot lined up, running along the edge of the zip. And then, as you would do with most sewing projects, I'm just going to go backwards and forwards on the little bits that I've cut, just to make sure they stay in place. Foot down, pin out. And then, as you can see, I'm going to go all the way down this side and along to the next corner in the same way. So I'm sewing it down. Okay, I'm now reaching the end. This is my last pin holding the zip in place, and then this is the pin to mark the middle of the purse. I'm going to go sew all the way down and as close to that pin at the middle as I can. I'm not going to cut the ends off. I'm just going to go backwards and forwards, and then I'm going to go back to the zip end to start and do the same with the other side. Okay, so I'm now going to do the other side. It's a little bit more difficult to line up on the machine, so I'm going to run just the inside of my foot here onto this zip edge. I've gone backwards and forwards to start, and I've started as close as I can to my middle pin marker, which is just here. I'm going to sew all the way around to the other end, just as we did before. Okay, so I've now sewed my zip all the way around, starting from here. Okay, so with these ends, what you can do is just measure them so they're roughly the same. Give yourself a couple of inches and just snip them off. If this was just a regular zipper, your end would be about here, similar to what it is at the other end. and you could just leave it for now. I'm going to sew these ends together just because it's an open-ended zip, and then I can test my zip so that I don't run it off the end by accident. Okay, so I've just run that through the machine. I'm going to take my middle marker pins out just so I don't stab myself during this. And then you have to kind of jiggle your zip around. It needs to come through here. And right. And then it's going to go all the way around. I have to tuck the edges in for now. These are all going to be top stitched down on the inside once you add your liner. Okay, and that's the rough outline of your purse. These bits leave for now because what we're going to do is we're going to tuck them in, so they're going to lay underneath here. So just leave them for now. And what we'll do is we'll start working on the lining, which will be sewn just straight onto the inside here, and it will hold all these bits down and out of the way. Okay, this is my lining fabric, and I've just laid it on the outer fabric for now. I cut it the same size as the outer fabric, which I will give you the measurement for, and I was a little bit worried because yesterday I just kind of done it by eye. And what you need to do is iron these edges down so that it's going to perfectly meet up like that side down and round all the sides, so that you can sew it straight on once you've added all your pockets. Okay, this is one of my credit card pockets. This is the first one that I'm going to do, so I've marked this 1/2 inch here and 1/2 inch here. So I'm going to fold that over down the mark and press it. And the same down the other side. And this is going to act as your template for all your other ones that you're going to do. And you can match them all up. And you're going to fold this in half. Just going to bring the outside over. So I've now done the same thing and pressed the raw edges in on my liner. If I was going to do this again and I was thinking a bit more clearly, I would cut this maybe 1.5 inch, 1.5 inch bigger, so that you've got a lot more to fold over. What I'm going to do in a minute is these corners, hopefully you can see that, I'm going to just cut them off so that it takes a little bit of bulk out. And if the zip here was folded down at the top and at the bottom, this is going to fit nicely inside my wallet. And the same for the sides. Again, this is personal preference if you want it a little bit bigger so that it fills all of it. But just try not to keep too close to the zip, because otherwise you might find that when you're zipping and unzipping the purse, you run into it. Okay, I'm going to pin that in a minute and show it again so it will be a bit easier. These are then going to go on here. So if you just put it on there and see that you've got a good gap either side, you can always adjust these as well. One of them, it doesn't matter if you leave the raw edge, because you're not going to see it. You're going to put this on here and sew all 3 edges, and then you're going to have another one that's going to be sewn on top, which we're going to deal with the raw edge on. So I'm going to press it the same as I've done this one, so that it makes the same size, and then I'm just going to fold one of the raw edges in. You won't see them once they're inside the purse anyway. And then because this fabric's patterned, I'm going to decide which pattern I like best, and I think I'm going to go for having that one and then the red ones. So this one I'm just going to fold it up just a little bit, probably about 1/4 inch, which will also work quite well because you want the cards in these ones to stick out at different heights. And that's going to be the one on the bottom. So they're going to sit like that inside your purse. Go ahead and do the other two the same, and then, okay, so I've just pinned my inner to the outer, just roughly, just so that I can see that it fits, and just to show you guys, you don't need to pin it, just as long as you're sure that it's going to fit. If you've left a bit more on the sides than what I have, that's great, because then you can always, you know, play around with it after you've sewn bits on. I just wanted to double check before I wasted time sewing pockets on. So the next part is going to be sewing on these pockets, and they're going to go just either side of the middle. So I'm going to mark the middle with seams in a minute. I'm going to unpin this and fold it in half so that I can see. And they're going to go on fairly close to the edge, but just leaving a gap in the middle. Now they can nearly overlap each other at the bottom, because you're just going to leave a gap between the top of this one and the top of this one. It's going to be 3/4 of an inch between there. Okay, so here is my bag, and my opening is just here. I'd unzip my zipper down a little bit anyway, so I'm going to put my hand in, pull it all the way open, and then turn the bag through. Just before I do that, what I'm going to do with the corners is I'm just going to cut off a little bit so it's like that, and that'll just help when you turn it, that they're going to be nice and even. So go ahead and do that to all your corners and turn it the right side. Okay, so here's my bag. I've turned it the right side out. I'm going to flip it and show you the inside. So I've tucked all the lining in there. I'm just going to pull the lining out again, and the gap in your lining, fold it over so it's nice and neat, and then just sew it along with your sewing machine. Some people like to do this by hand, but just for speed, and you're never going to see it, so it's easier just to run it on the sewing machine. Okay, so we're now going to work out on this outside pocket, which is lined. This is a bit of personal preference. Obviously on that one it was a bit smaller because I didn't know if it was going to work or not. This one I'm going to go for a bigger zip so it's easier to get your hand in and out of. I've just eyeballed it a bit. This is roughly 7.5 inches, and so I found a bit of fabric that's a bit of an offcut, but it happened just to be the same length. I folded this bottom part over, right sides together, and that's going to be your pocket. You then need to lay this up here, face down, so that your right sides are together, with your zip roughly where it's going to be on the top. Now from experience, the more fabric you can leave at the top, the easier this will make this. What you're going to do is lay your zip on there and make some marks. So the top of the zipper, the bottom of the zipper, and then where the zip is in between, and then I'll come back. Okay, so I've got my pocket on the outside, right sides together. I've got my zip here, and I've marked just the outside of the zip and where the actual zipper teeth run. Then taking this off and joined these lines up. So this box here is how wide my zipper teeth are. This line here corresponds to where the zip starts and where I want it to finish. Now I'm going to go around on the sewing machine and sew just outside of this box. Okay, it's a little bit hard to see because I've got white thread, but I've sewn roughly around that box. Now what I'm going to do is either get a seam ripper or some scissors, and I'm going to cut all the way down here. So I'm going to cut these ends in a Y. So you're going to cut like that, and then all the way down, just to freeze up these corners a little bit. Okay, so as you can see, I've cut down here, and I've cut, like I said, in that Y shape. I'm now going to take the pins out, and I'm going to turn this through the gap in here. Okay, so I've turned this through this hole, and what I'm now going to do is fold it so that you can't see any of the fabric from the inside, and I'm going to press it. It's much easier to do from the other side, so I'm going to start off by doing it this side. Same for the bottom, so you're making a little letterbox basically that your zip's going to go in. Sorry, my arms are right in the way of the thread. So I've pressed that, so I've now got a little letterbox. I can see a little bit of the fabric from this side, but it doesn't matter. And then on the back, what you'll have is this larger kind of opening piece. You're going to put your zip face down on the back, so that when you turn it the right way, the pull will be coming through from this side. It's really important that your pull is on the top. Don't sew it the other way, otherwise I've lost. Pin it in place. You might have to move the pull to some of this, and then just top stitch all the way around, making sure that you catch the zip in place. Okay, I've just gone around and sewn the zip in, and as you can see, it works quite nicely. The top stitch all the way around. This is what you can see from the back. Over the ends, when I went over them, I went backwards and forwards a little bit just to make sure they were definitely in. And then on the back, I just cut off any bits that were trailing. Now what you can do is fold this up so that it meets, and you're going to sew all the way around this, just this part. Don't sew it to the front of the bag, just go round down your 3 open edges and sew them up to make a pocket. Okay, I've just been around and sewn all that together. Now if I open it up, I can show you there's a nice pocket inside there for your coins to go in. I've used a nice bright lining because it's sometimes easy to kind of put a dark lining in there and you can't see anything. We're now going to get ready to assemble most things, and we're going to do the accordion flaps as well. Okay, so now we're going to move on to doing the accordion flaps, which there's 4 of, which will mean that your bag, or your purse, sorry, can open a bit wider. You're going to fold these so the short sides are together, just like that. And then with your sewing machine, you're just going to run down the 2 sides so that we can fold them the right way out. So you can do that with all 4, fold them and run down the 2 short sides with your sewing machine, about 1/4 to 1/2 in each seam allowance. Okay, so I've just been sewing all 4 of these. You need to turn them right side out, as I've done here, and push the corners out. And then I'm going to fold it so that you've got about 1 inch, or 1/2 inch, sorry, just about finger's width. And you're going to sew down this fold. Now I'm just going to do as I have been doing with the edge of my foot right on here. So about 1/4 of an inch. Here's one of the flaps that I've done, and I've sewed it down here so that you can fold it out and it will work like that. I've got another one lined up on the machine, so as you can see I've lined up the inside of my foot with the needle all the way to the left again, and I'm just going to sew a straight line down here and do that with all 4 of them. Okay, so here are my 4 tabs which I've finished. I've sewed them down the edge so you can unfold them. Okay, so here I've got the inner liner of the fabric, and I've pinned my accordion tabs so that the tab bit is facing upwards. They're in line with the pockets, and they're a small distance away from the edge, so they're not right on the edge. What you could do with these is when you sew the sides, you could sew down here and leave a small gap so that you could neaten your edges up. You could add a piece of ribbon on the top or put some bias binding around it. For speed, and because this is just for me, I'm just literally going to sew all the way down here, down here, down here, and down here. So here are my tabs all sewn down, they're sewn on. As I said before, if you want to put a piece of bias binding all the way down here to cover up these raw edges, you could do. On this other one that I've done, I've put a bit of ribbon just down there, and just literally sewn a stitch down the middle just to hide it. I'm not going to worry with this for the sake of time, and it's just for me, and I'm not really worried. I quite like the raw edge and the fraying, but it's totally up to you. So what you now need to do with this is bring your outside and pin it. So if you line up everything, I'm going to pin it so that this is down, and then we'll tuck away these ends of the zip as well. Okay, so I've pinned everything around here. I've tucked that end of my zip in, and then I've got this end that's just sticking out, so I'm going to tuck this just underneath my lining. I've sewn the ends of these over, so if the zip was to go in there, it's not going to come off. And now I'm just going to go and sew round all of the edge of this nice and close to the edge, and then we'll come back and we'll put the little bag in. So I've got to here, I've taken my pins out and it's moved a little bit, so I'm going to pull it up as I sew it. But just to show how close this is to the zip, what I'm going to do is zip it up a little bit, or you could stop and start again here, it's totally up to you, but I'm going to zip the zip out of the way and kind of wiggle it through the machine. Just to show you how I'm going to go around the corner, I've come up to the corner as close as I can, I've tucked all in out the way, remove the pin, I'm going to go up nice and close, leave it in, turn it as you would do normally, and then carry on. You might have to go over these again just to make sure you've caught everything. Okay, so here's the inside of my purse. I've sewed everything round, and then you get a nice top stitch on the outside. We now have to sew this bit in, which is a little bit complicated, just because there's so many layers. So let me try and put this down here, and hopefully you'll be able to see. So you've got these outside fluffy bits, which are going to fold up, like that one there. And then the other one is going to go on the top, like so. Make sure they're nice and even, and then just sew down them with the sewing machine like that, and do that to the other side. It's going to be a bit more difficult on the other side because obviously this side's then going to be attached, but just have a go and see how you get on. You can also hand stitch this to start with, and then go over it with the machine, or just hand stitch it, whatever you find easiest. Okay, so I've been up and down the side of that. To start with, I started at the bottom, went up, and then I started again, went from the top and went down as such, just so it gives it a bit of extra security, and back stitches along the top and bottom. Now you've got the other side to do. This is the side with the zip, so it might be easier just to move that out of the way, and then can't really see what I'm doing here. And then pull these out, and again match them up and then stitch down them as best as. I'm just going to show you this as I'm sewing it. Again, I'm going on the edge. They don't quite match at the bottom, but I'm not going to be too pedantic about it because it's really difficult to get them to match. And I'm going to come all the way along here and then go back again. As you can see, I've got the clean side here, and the side you stitch should be on your bag. It's finished. There's a little pocket on the back on the other side of my purse. And then inside you've got all of your pockets for your cards and your little purse for things to go in, like cash, things like that you don't want to fly out. So there you go. Perfect little purse. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and if you'd like any questions answered, please leave your questions in the comments and I will do my best to answer them.